A single steady heartbeat on a monitor can change everything. For charge nurse Clara Evans, saving the life of an unrecognizable John Doe covered in scars was never a choice. It was the oath she had sworn the day she became a nurse. But when hospital politics came for her, she lost everything. She was stripped of her badge and escorted off hospital property by security. The administrators of Mercy General branded her a reckless liability and did everything they could to ruin her career. Patricia Gower, the hospital's director of operations, thought she had solved the problem. She thought the silence would return and life could go back to normal, prioritizing wealthy donors and political connections over the lives of patients who did not matter to the bottom line. 3 days later, that silence was shattered forever. A convoy of unmarked black SUVs screeched to a halt outside the emergency bay, and a battle-hardened Special Forces commander stepped out with one question that would bring the entire hospital administration to its knees. The rain in Seattle never washes anything clean. It just blurs the neon lights of Mercy General Hospital into streaks of red and yellow, and turns the parking lot asphalt cold and slick underfoot. It was 2 a.m. On a Tuesday, the graveyard shift. Clara adjusted the collar of her scrubs. They were standard issue blue, but tonight they felt heavier than usual. She had been on her feet for 14 hours. Her feet throbbed and her shoulders ached, but her hazel eyes remained sharp and unrelenting as she scanned the patient intake board. At 32 years old, Clara was not just a nurse. She was the quiet backbone of Mercy General's Level 1 Trauma Center. She knew the rhythm of life and death in this ER better than she knew her own heartbeat. Coffee. She turned to see young nurse Toby holding out a lukewarm styrofoam cup. Toby had graduated nursing school only 6 months prior, and he still had not lost his optimism. He still shook whenever a code blue was called. "Thanks, Toby," Clara said, taking a sip. It tasted like burnt toast, but she did not care. The caffeine was all that was keeping her going. "Quiet night so far," Toby said, trying to smile. "Maybe the city is finally sleeping." Clara shook her head. "The city never sleeps, Toby. It just reloads." As if on cue, the red emergency phone on the trauma desk screamed. The sound cut through the low hum of the ER like a knife. Clara slammed her coffee down, and her entire demeanor shifted in an instant. Gone was the tired colleague. In her place was a person in command. "Mercy General, Evans speaking." The voice on the other end was crackling and panicked. "Inbound ETA 2 minutes. Male mid-30s. No ID. Massive blunt force trauma. Multiple gunshot wounds. Someone dumped him outside a fire station. He coded twice on the way over. We got him back, but he's barely hanging on." "Copy that," Clara said, her voice steady. She hung up and began barking orders. Toby grabbed the crash cart. "Dr. Trent, we have a critical inbound. GSW's unstable vitals." Dr. Nathaniel Trent looked up from his tablet. He had been scrolling through real estate listings this entire time. Trent was the textbook example of a NEPO hire, handsome, well-spoken, and the nephew of a hospital board member. He looked good on marketing material, but vanished the second real work needed to be done. Gunshot wounds. Probably just another gang member dumped by his friends. Trent sighed, making no effort to stand up. "Stabilize him if you can, then ship him over to county hospital if he doesn't have insurance. I'm not spending my night digging bullets out of a drug dealer." "He is a human being," Clara snapped, already walking towards the bay doors. "And he is dying." The ambulance bay doors hissed open, letting in a gust of cold rain and the smell of diesel. Paramedics rushed the gurney inside, their faces grim. The man on the stretcher was unrecognizable. He was caked in mud and blood, his clothes shredded to pieces. But even under all the grime, Clara noticed something unusual. This was not street clothing. He was wearing high-quality tactical pants and heavy, well-worn combat boots. "He lost his pulse twice on the way here," the lead paramedic shouted. "We got him back, but we are out of time." "Trauma 1, now," Clara commanded. She jumped onto the rail of the gurney and began performing chest compressions as they rushed down the hallway. Under her hands, she could feel that several of his ribs were broken. They burst into the trauma room, and Clara moved like lightning, hooking up monitor leads, checking 4 lines, assessing his injuries. "Where's Dr. Trent?" Clara yelled, her eyes glued to the monitor. His heart rhythm was erratic. Ventricular tachycardia. He is going to code again any second. I'm here. Trent strolled in, snapping on latex gloves with agonizing slowness. "Lower your voice, Nurse Evans. This behavior is unprofessional." "This man needs a chest tube now," Clara said, ignoring him. "Breath sounds are completely absent on his right side. Tension pneumothorax." "Let me perform my own assessment before you start diagnosing patients," Trent sneered. He held his stethoscope to the man's chest for barely half a second. "Fine. You are correct. Prep me for a chest tube." Just as Trent picked up a scalpel, the ER doors swung open again. This time, it was not medical staff. It was Patricia Gower, flanked by 2 security guards and a young man in an expensive silk suit. Patricia saw patients as spreadsheet entries. Profit in black, loss in red. That was all that mattered to her. "Dr. Trent," Patricia's voice was shrill. "Stop what you are doing." Trent paused, the scalpel hovering inches above the dying man's chest. "Patricia, I am in the middle of an emergency procedure." "We have a code VIP," Patricia announced, gesturing to the young man beside her. "This is Ethan Caldwell. His father is Senator Caldwell, our single largest donor. Ethan injured his wrist playing tennis, and he is in severe pain. He is demanding immediate attention." Clara froze. She looked at the man on the trauma table, his blood pressure plummeting, his oxygen saturation down to 75%. Then she looked at the wealthy young man in the doorway, holding his wrist like it had been amputated. "You have got to be kidding me," Clara whispered. "Dr. Trent," Patricia said, stepping uninvited into the sterile field in her high heels. "The senator is on the phone. He wants our best attending physician to treat his son. Now." Trent looked back and forth. On one side, a bloodied, unidentified man, almost certainly indigent, with no insurance and no connections. On the other, political favor, job security, and praise from aboard. He dropped the scalpel back into the tray and began pulling off his gloves. "Nurse Evans," Trent said, "you can continue stabilizing this patient. I need to attend to Mr. Caldwell." A cold, white-hot rage ignited in Clara's stomach. "You cannot leave," she said, stepping in front of him. "If you walk out of this room, this man dies." "Clara, be reasonable," Trent said, dismissive. "This is triage protocol. VIP patients take priority. A sprained wrist is not and will never be a higher priority than a man who is minutes away from death," Clara shouted. "This is patient abandonment. This is malpractice." Patricia stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. "This is an administrative order, Nurse Evans. Move aside, or you will regret this for the rest of your career." At that exact moment, the monitor behind Clara let out a long, monotone beep. The John Doe's heart had stopped. Clara looked at the flat line on the monitor. She looked at Trent, already walking away. She looked at Patricia's smug, unrepentant face. "No," Clara said. "Excuse me." Patricia blinked, stunned. Clara reached down and picked up the scalpel that Trent had abandoned. "I said no." The silence in Trauma 1 was deafening. "What do you think you are doing?" Patricia hissed. Clara ignored her. She did not look at the administrator. She did not look at the cowardly doctor. Her entire world narrowed down to the man dying on the table. "Toby," Clara barked. The young nurse jumped. "Take over compressions. Do not stop until I tell you to." "But Dr. Trent left," Toby stammered, wide with terror. "I don't care if the Pope left. Start compressions. Now." Toby did not argue again. He scrambled onto a stool and began pumping the man's chest. Clara grabbed a bottle of betadine and splashed it over the man's ribs. She knew what she was about to do would end her career. Nurses did not perform this kind of surgical procedure. If she cut this man, she could lose her license forever. She could face criminal charges. But if she did not, he would be dead in 60 seconds. It was never a choice. She found her landmark, fourth intercostal space, mid-axillary line. She took one deep breath and made her incision. A rush of trapped air hissed out his chest, followed by a small spurt of blood. The tension in his chest cavity was released. Almost instantly, Toby shouted, "We have a rhythm. Sinus tachycardia. He's back." Clara did not waste time celebrating. She grabbed a chest tube, worked it into the incision, and secured it with surgical tape. She watched his vital signs on the monitor. His oxygen levels began to climb. 80%, 85%, 90%. She grabbed her stethoscope and listened. Clear breath sounds. He was breathing again. She leaned over him and whispered into his ear, even though he was still unconscious. "I've got you. You are not dying alone tonight. Not on my watch." As she adjusted his arm to check his foreline, her hand brushed against his neck. Tucked just below his ear, partially hidden under beard and grime, she saw a tattoo. It was not a gang symbol. It was a small black trident with wings. She did not recognize it, but she filed it away. "Nurse Evans." The voice was cold. Clara straightened up. Her patient was critical, but stable. She turned around. Patricia was trembling with rage. Dr. Trent had returned, his face pale, but not out of concern for the patient. Out of vindictiveness. "You performed an unauthorized surgical procedure," Trent said, pointing a shaking finger at her. "You are not a surgeon. This is assault. This is practicing medicine without a license." "I saved his life," Clara shot back. "While you were too busy kissing a donor's ass to do your job." "You are finished," Patricia said. Her voice was eerily calm now. The rage had passed and been replaced by cold, calculated cruelty. "Get your things and leave. You're no longer an employee of this hospital." "This patient needs to be transferred to the ICU," Clara said, standing her ground. "He needs imaging to rule out internal bleeding." "We will handle the patient," Trent sneered. "You're no longer welcome here." "Security," Patricia commanded. "Escort her off the property. If she resists, call the police." Clara looked at Toby. The young nurse was crying silently. "Watch him, Toby," she said softly. "Don't let them kill him." "I won't," Toby whispered. Clara walked towards the door. As she passed Dr. Trent, she paused. She was 5 feet 5 inches, and he was 6 feet 2 inches. But in that moment, she towered over him. "You took an oath, Nathaniel. First, do no harm. You broke it tonight." "Get out," Trent shouted. Clara did not look back. She walked through the busy ER where patients and staff alike stared at her with wide eyes and out into the cold, rainy night. She sat on the curb of the parking lot. Rain soaked through her scrubs within minutes. She was shaking. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow pit of fear. She had just lost her job, her pension, and very likely her nursing license. She was 32, single, and deep in student loan debt. But then she thought of the sound she had just heard, air rushing back into a dying man's lungs. She thought of the steady beat returning to his heart monitor. "Worth it," she whispered to the rain. She did not know that inside the hospital, as Toby wheeled the John Doe towards the elevator, the man's hand twitched. She did not know that the man she had saved was not a homeless drifter. And she certainly did not know that she had just saved the life of Captain Elias Miller, the younger brother of one of the most formidable Special Forces commanders in the United States military. The next 3 days were a blur for Clara. She spent most of her time on her couch, drinking cheap wine and ignoring phone calls. Mercy General had not just fired her. They had set out to destroy her. They had filed a complaint with the state nursing board, seeking full revocation of her license. They had leaked a false narrative to local media, painting Clara as an unstable rogue nurse who had attacked her supervising physician. Patricia Gower had gone a step further, blacklisting her from every medical facility in the Seattle area. Clara applied to 3 urgent care clinics, and all 3 rejected her within hours. Patricia had not just fired her. She had salted the earth behind her. Inside Mercy General, life returned to its usual toxic normal. Dr. Trent was strutting around the hospital, bragging about how he had put the rogue nurse in her place. Ethan Caldwell had been discharged hours after his visit, prescribed powerful painkillers he did not need for a sprained wrist. The man Clara had saved was listed in hospital records simply as John Doe, indigent. He remained in a coma and had been moved to a semi-private room on the 4th floor. Patricia Gower had ordered floor nurses to provide only the bare minimum of care. Keep him alive, but do not waste resources on him, she had told them. Once he wakes up, we ship him to a state facility. No one at the hospital knew who he really was. No one knew that a military tracking beacon embedded in his gear had been damaged in the ambush that nearly killed him, delaying his team's ability to track his location. On the morning of the fourth day, the beacon flickered back to life. It sent a single encrypted ping to a satellite 200 miles above the Earth. That satellite relayed his coordinates to a secure operations base in Virginia, which sent a code red alert to a tactical team refueling in San Diego. Major Jackson Miller was in the middle of a briefing when his communications unit chirped. He looked down at the device, and for the first time in 10 years, the stoic, scarred face of the Special Forces commander went pale. "Sir," his lieutenant asked. "They found him," Jackson said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "They found Elias. He's in Seattle. Is he alive? Signal is weak. He's stationary. The coordinates put him in a hospital." Jackson stood up so fast he knocked his chair over. "Get the birds ready. We fly now." Back at Mercy General, the morning shift was just getting started. Patricia Gower was at the front desk, berating a receptionist over a minor filing error. The automatic doors slid open. Usually, the doors admitted patients, family members, or paramedics. This time, 6 men walked in. They did not walk like civilians. They moved in a tight V formation, the kind of formation used to clear hostile territory. They wore unmarked tactical gear and carried themselves with a quiet, lethal grace that made the entire room go cold. At the front of the formation was Major Jackson Miller. He was 6 feet 4 inches, pure muscle and quiet intent. Even indoors, he wore dark sunglasses. His jaw was set in a line, so hard it could cut glass. The hospital security guard, a retired police officer named Barney, stepped forward. "Excuse me, gentlemen. You cannot enter a hospital with." Jackson did not even slow down. He walked past Barney as if the man was not there. One of the soldiers behind Jackson gently but firmly moved Barney aside, with a hand that felt like a steel beam. The formation stopped at the central nurses' station. Doctors stopped dictating notes. Patients stopped moaning. Every single person in the ER was staring at the group of dark, quiet giants standing in the middle of their workplace. Patricia Gower looked up, annoyed. She adjusted her glasses. "Can I help you? This is a hospital. You are blocking the hallway and scaring the patients." Jackson Miller slowly removed his sunglasses. His eyes were ice blue and burned with a terrifying intensity. He placed his hands on the counter. "I'm looking for my brother," Jackson said. His voice was not loud, but it carried to the back of the room. "Captain Elias Miller. Our tracking signal places him in this building." Patricia scoffed. "We have no patient by that name here. And even if we did, I cannot disclose patient information due to privacy laws." "I do not care about your laws," Jackson said. "He is MIA. We tracked his last known position to this hospital. He has a trident tattoo on his neck, just below his ear." Patricia paused. She remembered the report. The indigent John Doe. "Ah," she said, her lip curling with disdain. "The charity case." Jackson's knuckles turned white where he gripped the counter. "Charity case. He was brought in 3 days ago. No identification. We have been keeping him alive on the hospital's dime," Patricia said, trying to reassert her authority. "He's on the 4th floor. You can take him with you. It will save us our budget." Jackson signaled to his men. "2 of you secure the perimeter. 2 more go upstairs. Locate my brother. Our medic goes with you." As his team moved with precise efficiency, Jackson stayed at the counter. He stared at Patricia, and he knew something was very wrong. Based on the extent of Elias's injuries, he should have been dead. Someone had performed a miracle to keep him alive for 3 days. "Who treated him?" Jackson asked. "Dr. Trent was the attending physician," Patricia said, gesturing to Nathaniel Trent, who was cowering behind a computer monitor. Jackson looked at Trent. He saw his soft hands, his expensive watch, the sweat beading on his forehead. He knew men like this. This man did not save people like Elias. "You're telling me you stabilized a tension pneumothorax and repaired a damaged artery in a trauma bay. Jackson asked. I supervised the procedure, Trent stammered. Jackson narrowed his eyes. Our medic reviewed the patient chart on his way up, Jackson said. The notes show an emergency field thoracostomy, performed with a standard scalpel, no specialized equipment. That is combat medicine. That is not what you learn in medical school. You did not save him. This was not a question. Where's the person who actually did? Patricia bristled. That is irrelevant. That employee was terminated for gross insubordination. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Terminated, Jackson said slowly. She disobeyed direct orders, Patricia said defensively. She prioritized a homeless vagrant over a VIP donor. She was reckless. Jackson looked around the room. He saw nurses and staff looking down, avoiding eye contact. He saw the quiet disdain in their eyes when they looked at Trent. What is her name? Jackson asked. No one answered. I will ask one more time, Jackson roared. His voice shook the walls. What is her name? Toby, the young nurse, stepped forward from the corner. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. Her name is Clara Evans, and she's the best nurse this hospital ever had. Clara lived in a small studio apartment in Rainier Valley. It was the only place she could afford on a nurse's salary while paying down her student loans. Now, with no income and a ruined reputation, even this small apartment was about to slip through her fingers. The rain hammered against her single-pane window. Clara sat on the floor, surrounded by cardboard packing boxes. She had just received an eviction notice. Patricia Gower had even leaked the hospital's false narrative to her landlord, who had terminated her lease. She picked up her phone. The headline on a local news blog stared back at her. Unstable nurse fired after violent outbreak in Trauma Bay. Clara was reaching for a roll of packing tape when she heard 3 sharp, measured knocks on her door. Not the friendly rap of a neighbor. The kind of knock that demanded an answer. Who is it? Clara called out. Delivery, a deep voice rumbled. Clara knew a lie when she heard one. Leave it on the mat, she said. She stood up and grabbed the only weapon she had, a heavy brass table lamp. I cannot do that, Miss Evans, the voice replied. Please open the door. I would prefer not to break it down. The tone was polite, but the threat was undeniable. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought the police had come to arrest her. She took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door 3 inches, keeping the chain in place. She expected a police officer. She expected a process server. She did not expect to see a man so large he filled her entire doorframe. Water dripped from the brim of his black tactical cap. Behind him, 2 more men stood in the hallway shadows, watching the stairwell. Clara Evans. The man asked, Who wants to know? Clara said, gripping the doorframe. If you're here for Mercy General, you can tell your lawyers to speak to my public defender. I have nothing to say. I am not from the hospital. Jackson reached into his jacket. Clara flinched, raising the lamp. Jackson moved slowly, to avoid startling her, and pulled out a photograph. He held it up to the crack in the door. It was a photo of 2 men in navy dress whites, smiling on a dock. One was Jackson. The other was the John Doe. You treated him, Jackson said. 3 days ago. Trauma 1. Clara lowered the lamp. Her anger melted away, replaced by fear of a different kind. Is he alive? She asked, her voice soft. I never heard anything. They wouldn't tell me. He is alive, Jackson said. Barely. He woke up an hour ago. Clara unhooked the chain and opened the door wide. Jackson stepped inside, and his men remained in the hallway to guard the door. Her tiny apartment suddenly felt impossibly small. Jackson glanced at the packing boxes and the crumpled eviction notice on top of one of them. He woke up confused. Agitated. Combat stress, Jackson said. He broke the arm of a resident who tried to change his floor. He won't let any of our medics near him. He says he remembers a voice. A woman who told him he wasn't dying alone. He won't calm down. He's ripping out his own 4 lines. Clara. If he keeps this up, he will bleed out. Clara looked down at her hands. I can't help you. I'm not a nurse anymore. They suspended my license. If I step foot in that hospital again, I will be arrested for trespassing. Jackson stepped closer. He towered over her, but his expression softened. It was not pity. It was respect. I have seen the security footage, Jackson said quietly. I saw you jump onto that gurney to perform compressions. I saw you pick up that scalpel, knowing it would destroy your career, while a coward in a white coat walked away. I just did my job, Clara said. Tears stung her eyes. You did more than your job. You went to war for him, Jackson said. And now I need you to do it again. I have nothing left, Clara whispered. Patricia Gower destroyed everything. Jackson picked up her crumpled eviction notice and crushed it in his fist. You think Patricia Gower has real power, he said, dark amusement in his tone. You have no idea what power is, Clara. Patricia Gower is a bureaucrat. I am the commander of the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment. I answer to 2 people, the President and God. And sometimes I make the President wait. Pack a bag, Jackson ordered. Not for moving. For work. You're coming with us. What about the police? Let me worry about the police. Let me worry about the hospital. Your only job is to keep Elias alive. Can you do that? Clara looked at her half-packed boxes. She looked at the life she was losing. Then she looked into Jackson's eyes. The same spark that had made her pick up that scalpel 3 days ago reignited in her chest. Give me 5 minutes. By the time they arrived back at Mercy General, Jackson had already fixed everything. Patricia Gower had been fired effective immediately, pending an investigation into patient abandonment and gross negligence. Dr. Trent had been arrested. He was facing federal charges for falsifying medical records and medical negligence. The hospital board had sent Clara a formal letter, begging her to come back to her old job, with a raise and a public apology. Clara walked past Patricia, who stood there stunned, unable to speak. She did not gloat. She did not even glance at her. All she cared about was getting to Elias. When she reached his room, she saw that he had barricaded the door with a hospital bed. He was terrified, disoriented, and holding a small scalpel he had taken from a medical tray. He was threatening to harm anyone who tried to come in. Clara did not shout. She did not demand entry. She simply knocked gently. Captain Miller, she said, her voice soft. Inside the room, his ragged breathing stopped. Who is that? His voice rasped. It sounded like gravel under tires. My name is Clara. I was there the night you came in the rain. I told you I would not let you die alone. A long silence. Then they heard the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. The door cracked open. Elias looked terrible. He was awake and furious. His eyes were wild and bloodshot. He was holding the scalpel in a white-knuckled grip. But the second he saw her face, his shoulders relaxed. He dropped the scalpel onto the floor. It's you, he whispered. All the fight left him in an instant, and he swayed on his feet. Clara caught him and guided him gently back to his bed. Are you going to let me fix your 4? Or are you going to bleed all over my clean scrubs? She asked. Elias let out a painful, dry laugh. You're bossy. I'm a charge nurse, Clara said, helping him settle into bed. Bossy comes with a uniform. She worked quickly and quietly, reinserting his 4, administering fluids and mild pain medication. As the sedative took effect, his eyes began to droop. They said you were gone, he murmured. The woman in the suit. She said you were gone. I'm back, Clara said. Elias nodded. His eyes closed. He fell asleep to the steady beep of his heart monitor. The most beautiful sound Clara had ever heard. Jackson stepped into the room quietly. He looked at his sleeping brother, then at Clara. You are good at this, he said. I know. The hospital board wants to offer you your job back. A promotion. A public apology. Clara looked down at Elias. She thought of everything she had endured at that hospital. She thought of how easy it would have been for them to let a man die, just to please a donor. I don't want it, Clara said. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Mercy General is a business, Clara said. I am done saving profits. I want to save lives. Jackson smiled. It was a rare sight, and it transformed his face. Good, because I have a better offer. The twists were not over. In the days that followed, Jackson's team recovered data from Elias's gear. They learned that Elias had not been the victim of a random attack. He had been ambushed. He had been investigating an illegal arms deal, selling military-grade weapons to insurgent groups. And the trail led straight to the top, to Senator Caldwell. Ethan Caldwell had not shown up at Mercy General that night by coincidence. and he did not come in for a sprained wrist. He had been tipped off by Patricia Gower, who was being paid off to keep an eye out for unidentified patients matching Elias's description. Ethan had come to confirm a kill. The corruption went deeper than anyone could have imagined. But so did their resolve. One night, Caldwell's mercenaries found their safe house, while Jackson's team was away securing evidence from the senator's estate. Elias was still injured, his sutures barely healed, but he and Clara fought side by side to defend themselves. In the chaos, Elias's stitches tore open, and Clara knew she might lose him all over again. Just when all hope seemed lost, Jackson arrived with backup. Ethan Caldwell did not make it out of the woods that night. The evidence recovered by Jackson's team was enough to bring down the senator and the entire network of corruption that he had built. 3 weeks later, Clara stood in a decommissioned cliffside radar station that Jackson's unit had converted into a safe house. The wind off the Pacific Ocean smelled of salt and pine. Elias was sitting on the edge of his cot, healing fast. Clara had turned down every offer Mercy General had sent her. Instead, she had accepted Jackson's offer. She was now a special operations medical contractor. The pay was more than triple her old salary. The hours were worse. The work was infinitely more dangerous. But she would never again have to choose between her oath and the whims of hospital administrators and wealthy donors. She answered to no one but the men and women she was there to save. Where will we go next? Clara asked Jackson as she finished changing Elias's dressings. Wherever we are needed, Jackson said. Clara smiled. That was good enough for her. This is the story of Clara Evans. She lost her job, her home, and her reputation. But she never lost her integrity. Her story is a reminder that the bravest heroes do not always carry guns. Sometimes they carry stethoscopes. Sometimes true courage is not about charging into battle. It is about doing the right thing, even when you have everything to lose. If this story of courage and justice touched you, please hit the like button to help us share stories like this with more people. Would you have had the courage to stand up for your oath the way Clara did, knowing it could destroy your career? Let us know in the comments below. If you want more stories of quiet heroes, justice served, and people who choose to do the right thing when no one is watching, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching.